at a central and safe location. And ladies and gentlemen, this Okanagan Buddhist Culture Center is the perfect example of that. And today, we are gathered here to celebrate the inauguration of the safe and sacred spiritual home today. Thank you.
Thật là một niềm vinh hạnh cho ban tổ chức chúng con khi được quý ngài hoan hỷ Quan Lâm Chứng Minh tham dự. Chúng con xin thành kính cung đón bước chân an lạc của Thượng tọa trụ trì chùa Vạn Hạnh Victoria đạo hiệu Thích Pháp Ấn. Chúng con xin cung nghênh sự hiện diện của Thượng tọa Thích Quảng Từ, chùa Cổ Tự Seattle. Và xin cung nghênh chào đón thầy trụ trì chùa Tây Trúc, thầy Thích Pháp Hòa. Xin giới thiệu sự hiện diện của quý đại đức Thích Trí Thân, Thích Pháp Hoa, Thích Viên Trung từ Vancouver đây. Quý đại đức Thích Trúc Thái Hiền, Thích Quảng Thịnh, Thích Tịnh Trơn từ Việt Nam đến. Quý đại đức Thích Đức Tạng và Thích Tịnh Tạng từ Edmonton đến. Ni sư Thích Nữ Minh An Đạo Tràng Pháp Hoa, Vancouver BC. Ni sư Hạnh Viên chùa Hải Ấn, Nanaimo. Sư cô Thích Nữ Hạnh Định, Seattle. Sư cô Thích Nữ Pháp Thân, Edmonton. Và cùng chư ni chúng tu viện Chân Nguyên, Langley, BC. Và tất cả quý đồng hương Phật tử đến từ Hoa Kỳ, các tỉnh Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario và Quebec và các vị đang chứng kiến online khắp nơi trên thế giới. Xin quý vị một tràng pháo tay nữa thật lớn để chào đón tất cả quý tăng ni, quý quan sát.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to welcome all the monastics from across Canada and as well as the U.S. and Vietnam that came and joined us in this historic day. Thank you. We also would like to welcome all of our special guests today. First of all, representing the city of Kelowna, Councillor Loyal Woodridge, Councillor Maxine DeHart, Ms. Lydia Krochak, she's a senior planning technician for the city. Ms. DeLacy Tedesco, the cultural advisor for the city of Kelowna. Representing the RCMP, Corporal Jocelyn Noseworthy, Inspector Rob Picola, it happens. I understand the feeling.
He's the RCMP as well.
I am a member of the RCMP, so I understand Rob's problem. Representing the Central Okanagan Heritage Society, Mr. Don Knox. However, he is unable to be here. Oh, so here, sorry. I was told wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Bon.
My apology. I was told that earlier this morning that you could make it. Thank you so much.
He missed a coffee.
Mr. Don Rapone, Miss Lori Dauncey, Miss Mary Brown Clayton, Miss Carol Muller, Miss Janice Henry, and Mr. Peter Chataway. We also invite Mr. Randy Fox. However, I understand that he couldn't be here today. We also have Mr. and Mrs. Francis and Aaron Ernie Park. We also have Councillor Stack from the City of Kelowna as well. And Miss Ann Stack, his significant other from the Kelowna Buddhist Temple. Miss Kate Evans, representing the Catholic Parish. Mr. Philip Patera from the Okanagan Sikh Temple. Mr. Tony Bushi, the manager from the Interior Savings. We also have the presence of the UBC Okanagan, Dr. David Geary, the Doctor of Anthropology. He's the person that did the research on Buddhism at the university as well. Dr. Joanne Taylor,
Doctor of Philosophy.
and now we would like to invite our special guests for his speeches. First guest is going to be Councillor Oloy Whitridge on behalf of the Mayor as well as the City of Kelowna.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I would like to take the time to acknowledge that we're gathered today on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. I honor and respect these lands of the Syilx Okanagan people that have called these lands home since time immemorial. I would like to take the time to welcome you all on behalf of Mayor Colin Bazran and my council colleagues, two of which are joining today, Councillors DeHart and Stack, as well as our partners from the RCMP. Thank you for inviting us to be here on this historic day for the restoration of St. Aidan's Church. Some of the history of this place: St. Aidan's Church was originally built in 1933. At the time, there was no place for Anglican worship in Rutland other than a small room in a community hall. St. Aidan's Church was an important mainstay to the early rural community of Rutland. It also represents how important places of worship were to rural settlements and the central role they played in community life. Fast forward to 2009, when city staff at the City of Kelowna identified the historic church as a high priority of conservation work. The city looked to the community for ideas and put out a request for expressions of interest in 2012. It was then received a submission from the Okanagan Buddhist Cultural Society, and a partnership was formed. And we've just heard about the costs of building this and restoring it, and we couldn't do this without the partners in our community. And that brings us to where we are today. I'd like to thank the Okanagan Buddhist Cultural Society for the amazing job they did in restoring the church and constructing the new cultural center. I'd like to acknowledge the hard work and volunteer hours that were spent restoring the building to what we see today. I'm so proud of this cultural asset as it's been preserved, so thank you so much for investing in our community. St. Aidan's has been officially designated as a municipal heritage building and heritage site, so future generations can continue to enjoy the historic nature of where we are today. So thank you all for being here. You've traveled a long way, and for those of you that are locals, I'd just like to say thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Councillor.
Kính thưa quý vị, thì Tony chỉ nói sơ là ông Woodbridge á, ổng rất là cảm ơn chùa mình, mặc dầu là mua cái chùa cổ hồi xưa, nhưng mà mình vẫn giữ được cái truyền thống của họ. Tại vì trước là mặt tiền đó quý vị, thì mình vẫn giữ như vậy, nhưng mà mình sửa đổi trông thật là khang trang, và họ rất là cảm ơn mình đã đến đây để có chỗ để thờ phượng Tam Bảo. Đó là ý của ông. Và tiếp theo đó là lời phát biểu của đại diện Hội Văn hóa, President of Heritage Society.
And now we would like to invite the representative from Central Okanagan Heritage, Mr. Peter Chataway, for his remarks.
Good morning, everybody. So I have been working with the original committee members, and then this project was passed on to architect Randy Fox, who apologizes for not being here today. He has COVID, unfortunately, with the risks of travel. But I would just like to add a few points from the sort of historical background, a little bit, some of the heritage and the development. So what you cannot see today, the heritage aspect, which is on the west side of the building, and that is quite in contrast to this east side of the building. And the concept behind architectural concept that Randy Fox had established for this was that the small old St. Aidan's Church would be a jewel in a jewel box, and that a showcase jewel, and then the new would kind of have the modern 21st century adaptive reuse on this side, which we see here with this very kind of 19th century Buddhist temple gateway, strong timber elements, and traditional. And so this building's also being designed for future expansion. And but just going back originally, there's a couple of Rutland names that are very much associated with the St. Aidan's Church. Starting in 1929, when a small group of Rutland farmers and merchants discussed building a church. Mugford was a trail, and then a lane, and now it's a road with the address of 135. I'm sure this will become very well known in the future. And there was a fellow, Ben Hardy, and his wife, who was a local grocer and hardware store, that sold this land to the Anglicans to build the church. And then the superintendent of the Black Mountain Irrigation District designed the church, Enoch Mugford. And Hector Miranda was the builder, the contractor, with a crew of volunteers, of course. We know about that. In 1933, that occurred. It was very quaint and small and served its purpose. In 1938, an addition was put on the church. In 1958, the original porch, the lich gate, was added and reused. And then in 1980, the church was moved, rebuilt down the Rutland Road, and this church sat empty from 1990, and it was slated for demolition. But the stalwart residents of Rutland refused to allow it to be demolished, and it went on for decades, really. And it just was the little building that would not die, And then when Howe showed up he wanted a very small, quaint building for his congregation, he thought that old church would be a wonderful place. And of course, as the project developed, the monk, I said, can you make it bigger? Can you make it bigger? And now today we can see why they needed a bigger building. But architecturally, when you go inside the small part on the other side, it's what they call a British arts and crafts style, and it's sort of associated with the motherland of England, where these arches, the columns and arches inside this building, are the only ones of their kind in Kelowna, and they're replicas from the original St. Aidan's or Aidan's first church in a place called Lindisfarne Abbey in Northumberland, England. And you think, okay, well, that's interesting, but what relevance? Well, Norman is the key word here. The Normans arrived from Europe onto the country, into England in 1066, and they brought good government, Christian values, and business practices to England. They civilized the Celts. So these arches go way back to the 11th century. And now here we are in the 21st century, still viewing that style and that example of architecture, when this is what a really good example of history and heritage and how it's relevant to us all. So in December 2003, the Kelowna's Community Heritage Commission gave a 2-month delay to the demolition of the church so that people could find another use. And that's what started happening. I did the first drawings of this church in 2004, which is a few years ago. The Buddhist community raised $30,000 to purchase space in lieu of parking. They paid $45,000 for a landscaping fund. They bought the property for $100,000. It was just kept going on and on and on. And it was a wonderful process, although very arduous in many moments. And in particular, it's come out with this great example of conservation in design, or what we call rehabilitation, which is allowing the heritage to have a new use, but preserve the old. So just in closing, I'd like to sort of thank a few people in particular, like Min Chow and his wife. So Min was here earlier. He was really the inspiration. He wanted this temple so badly. Min, it's very good of you to keep us all, he deserves a round. And Luke and Chu, you were also there. Yeah, nice to see you, Luke. Yeah. And they were so good at this early committee, and Hao Van Ying, who you met earlier, and then of course Master Thich Phap Hoa. That's so wonderful the work you've done, and the other monks and the nuns and the congregations across Canada who started and supported this project. And then at the City of Kelowna, there was a couple of exceptional people. Jonathan Stauffer in the real estate division put so much work into this. He consolidated 3 city lots into one, and all the site servicing and everything, and really put together this package of property. And then Lydia, who's sitting here, deserves a round of applause. Stand up, Lydia. Because Lydia Kowalczyk, she actually processes through the planning department, which is, we all know, close to a nightmare for most people. But she did a beautiful job of challenging her own staffers on aspects of it. So that was a wonderful thing. And then just within getting it through the heritage and the zoning and the planning department. And then finally Randy Fox, the architect, and Joseph Sarkor, the engineer, Delnor Construction with Phil Friesen, Laurie Dauncey, and Subtrades, Alistair Smith, the heritage carpenter with Robin Digby, the landscape architects, bench site. They're all wonderful, hardworking people that created this wonderful project, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. If you could remain here for a second. Peter, remain here for a second. Ladies and gentlemen, we, as a token of our appreciation for the work that the heritage folks has been doing and Fox architecture, unfortunately, Randy couldn't be here today. We would like to invite Master Phap Hoa up to the stage to present the certificate of appreciation for these 2 fine gentlemen. And he's nice enough to accept this for Randy as well.
Lời nói cũng hơi dài, thành ra ban tổ chức chúng tôi xin cố gắng là lắng đọng lại những cái điểm chân. Và thực sự là ông nói vào cái nhà thờ này á, là ở phía trước là nằm về phía tây của Kelowna, thì ông nói là một cái bảo vật rất là quý cho cái người làng ở tại đây. Và thì năm 1929 á, là cái nhà thờ bắt đầu, nhưng mà khi mà bắt đầu họ xây dựng rồi đó thì cũng không có bao nhiêu Phật tử về đây. Thì đến khi mà bắt đầu khoảng 1990 thì coi như là họ muốn phá bỏ cái chùa. Nhưng người dân ở tại Renton này họ không chịu. Họ mới nói là tại sao cái nhà thờ á, là từ những người Anh qua, cái kiến trúc á, là của người Anh, là cái arch á. Quý vị vô trong cái chánh điện mình á, quý vị thấy chánh điện mình vẫn giữ cái vòng tròn, đó là cái arch mà của người Anh họ qua, họ xây dựng. Thành ra tất cả những mà dân làng ở đây họ nói phải giữ cái chùa. Nhưng mà may mắn thay đó là trong khi chùa không có hoạt động, không thể đập bỏ được, nhưng mà nhờ chùa mình đã đến là họ cho cái cơ hội để xây dựng cái chùa của mình ở phía sau, vẫn lớn, vẫn rất là đẹp. Đó là những điểm chính mà ông muốn nói. Xin cảm ơn.
And from what Peter was talking about, all the invited guests, the VIP folks, after the events, if you would remain at your seats, we will give you an official tour of what Peter is talking about, so we all understand what's going on.